Welcome to Composting at the Point. My name is Randall Penn. I'm a faculty member with the University of Florida IFAS Extension here in Sarasota County. Today, we're going to talk about and learn a little bit about community composting and how to have a successful composting program at the Point. Composting is the controlled decomposition of organic materials by microorganisms. Composting happens naturally out in nature all the time. Leaves fall to the ground when you mow your grass. They break down with microorganisms all around us in nature. But what we're doing is we're doing it in a controlled setting, like a bin. It's a process that combines carbon and nitrogen. And in the sense of composting, we define those as browns and greens. You may ask, well, why do we need to compost? Why is it important? Well, there are really two reasons why. Number one, it's used for fertilizing and conditioning land and soil. We're in a very sandy area here in Florida, so it's a great natural way to do that. And number two, it's a great way from diverting food waste from entering our landfills, thus prolonging the life of them. And it also has a number of environmental benefits to do that as well. So what goes into a composting bin? Well, this graphic really lays out that equation. We want to add browns, which is the carbon, greens, which are nitrogen items like food. We would combine that with water and air. If you put those in the proper order and the proper combination, it attracts microorganisms, worms and insects, but more importantly, it attracts microorganisms, the bacteria that break down the food waste, thus creating the usable compost that we're after. So let's start with the greens, which is where we get the most questions about. This is the food waste. The food waste is high in nitrogen. In our composting bins, when we build our piles, it's going to be in much smaller amounts than the browns. Underlined here is the rule of thumb I want everyone to take away from adding food waste. Food from plants is okay. If it's from an animal, we want to stay away. So essentially, if it's something that grows in the earth, it's going to be okay. It's going to be safe in our bins. If it's from a chicken, a cow, any other animal related product, dairy products, we want to stay away. I have a number of items that I pulled out of my refrigerator and freezer that have been kind of tucked in there over the week. And I kind of want to take you through the process of what we could put in a composting bin and what we want to avoid. A good rule of thumb is anything from a plant is okay. If it's from an animal, stay away. So all kinds of vegetables and fruits are fine. We want to stay away from meat, from chicken, from seafood, those type of items. I've laid out a bunch of different items here, and hopefully you can see them okay in our video. The first, I always have one of these half-cut onions here. I never quite use those all up. Those are great to use. Maybe some leftover basil leaves that have kind of dried out right there. I have a couple of these little halos, right? I never quite get to the bottom of the bag of those. These are all going to be great to compost. A few other items I have some coffee grounds here. A lot of coffee drinkers will produce those grounds. Those are wonderful to compost and add into your bin, high in nitrogen. A few other items I have here. Sometimes we get down to the end of the loaf of bread and it goes kind of stale. Bread is one of those items we can compost and put into your bin, so great to use as well. A few other things I have here is, in the freezer, we always tend to have the bottom of a couple little, these are some crispy crowns there that are left over. Those are from potatoes and are going to be good to compost. Here I have a little bit of blueberries that I have left over in there. Those are going to be compostable as well. And then right here is one I always get asked about, and these are eggs. These are full eggs here. Eggs we do not want to put in our community composting bin. They will attract pests and they will be a real deterrent and cause a lot of smells. We want to stay away from eggs. Now, I always get asked, what about egg shells? Egg shells are okay in one condition. I ask you to rinse them out first before putting them in. It's just a safer way to put those and incorporate them into the bin, and that goop on the inside, the egg whites, that won't attract those pests. I have examples of 3 different types of bins here, but there are lots of options that you can use to collect your food waste. I have one plastic one that I purchased here We have a nice one from silicone here that you can use as well. This is really cool because it has a hook on it. You can put it over your countertop here, and as you go through and you cut up your different fruits and vegetables, you can enter those and swipe them right into the bin. It works really, really well. Or even another thing, you know, we have a lot of these kind of old Tide containers here from the Tide Pods. You know, find something that you can reuse around the house and incorporate that into your composting bin. I had some cut up basil leaves, which are, you know, fantastic to add into your bin here. I have some cuttings of those onions that I talked about earlier, so we can add those into the bin as well. I have some oranges here. Orange peels are great to use. You know, instead of taking these and kind of throwing them down to disposal over here, composting is a behavioral change. Just teaching yourself not to put it down the disposal or into the trash down here. Just put these items into your composting bin as you go through. One thing I will note, all the fruit that we have has these tiny little stickers on them, whether it's an apple, an orange, a banana. Try to take these pieces off. These never break down. They're made of plastic. We want to keep plastic out of our community composting bin. So if you can, try to pull those things off. Go ahead and put those in your bin. I had some cuttings that I saved the other day, some peppers and red peppers, green peppers. I put them in a plastic bag just because that's the way I was cutting them. Be sure to not put the plastic bag in. We want to make sure to just dump those in there and dispose of the plastic bag correctly. We don't want plastic and items that don't compost in the community composting bin. Remember, this isn't your own bin. There are a group of people who are all working together to try to create this compost. So keeping it as clean as possible and putting the right items in is very, very important.
Composters are encouraged to use the large green community compost bin behind the cottage. The black open bin is for yard waste, which is our browns only. Please cover your kitchen greens with equal amounts of browns. Covering up your food waste reduces odors and will help reduce the amount of flies and rodents.
You've been collecting your food waste in one of the bins, or you have a system that you have in your kitchen. You can do this every day. You can come down and add your food every week. Do it when you take the trash out or you're recycling. Find the system that works for you. The main thing I would say is don't come down and add large volumes of food at one time, because there are other people using this system. So it's best to kind of space it out just a little bit, and that it just makes it a little bit more manageable. Occasionally, some of you may just be using plastic bags or different types of system and not one of these. We want to make sure not to have plastic or any type of those, you know, stickers and things like that that are on the fruit. Try to get those out of there, because they just end up clogging up the system and making a mess. So the next step is we want to balance the food we put in there with some browns. And the browns are going to be from the yard waste that's collected at the facility. It can be oak leaves, different cuttings from the trees, maybe some mixed in like mulch material. You're going to want to put in at least the equal amount of food of the yard waste here.
Food. Where these systems tend to go wrong is when you have too much food waste and not enough of the browns that are balanced in there. That's why they're provided for you to add in and add into the bin there when you drop your throwing in napkins and paper towels and things like that. You know, in your own personal backyard composting, that may be okay, but you got to think of the larger community here. A little bit of the paper, but think of coffee grounds, coffee filters and things like that. But let's stay away from just mail and large pieces of paper and things like that. We want to recycle that stuff. So let's recap these steps right here. Step one, we want to collect your food waste. It's plant-based foods only. Step two, we want to collect and then add it into the compost bin. And then we want to balance it out with that brown material, the carbon material. Those are all going to be done by you, the residents. The next steps here, step four, adding moisture, right? And screening the compost when it's finished and emptying the bins out. That's all going to be managed by the composting team. And of course, step five, enjoying the improved environment there at the point, that can be enjoyed by everyone.
We need everyone's support and cooperation to make this composting effort a success for the Pointe.